Good afternoon. Fade to black breaking news for this Thursday, May 18th, 2023. This is all of the news that you need. I'm Jimmy Church. Let's get straight to it. On this day in history, 1980, following an earthquake with a magnitude of 5.1 on the Richter scale, Mount St. Helens in Washington state erupted in one of the greatest volcanic explosions ever recorded in North America. On this day in 1980, that mountain just vanished, by the way, that day. Here's your fader fact. This is interesting. 100 years ago, in 1923, Cleveland, Ohio was the fifth largest city in the United States, behind only Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago, and New York City. Today, it's number 54. Seriously. And that is your fader fact. Let's get to the breaking news. An amateur rocket set a new record last month, soaring far higher than Mount Everest. On April 16th, students from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University launched a small rocket to a maximum altitude of 47,732 feet, about 1.6 times higher than Everest, which stands at 29,032 feet tall. The feat also more than doubled the previous record set by U.S. undergraduate and collegiate amateurs, which was 22,000 feet. The launch from right here in the Mojave Desert in California broke the sound barrier easily, reaching Mach 1.5 during its 26.1 second flight. And while we are on the subject of Mount Everest, by the way, Kami Rita, one of the world's greatest mountain guides, regained his title for the most climbs of Mount Everest after scaling the peak for a 27th time yesterday. Just 3 days after a fellow Sherpa climber equaled his previous record. Kami is 53 years old. He reached the 29,032-foot summit, guiding another group of climbers, and everybody reached the peak safe and sound. 53 years old. Absolutely incredible. Now, check this out. An 1,100-year-old, that's 1,100-year-old Hebrew Bible that is one of the oldest surviving biblical manuscripts, sold for $38 million in New York yesterday. It's only 1,100 years old. That's not that old, right? $38 million. It's called the Codex Sassoon, a leather-bound handwritten parchment volume containing a nearly complete Hebrew Bible, was purchased by former U.S. Ambassador to Romania, Alfred H. Moses, on behalf of the American Friends of the ANU and donated to the ANU Museum in Tel Aviv. It's one of the highest prices paid for any manuscript sold at auction. Back in 2021, a rare copy of the United States Constitution sold for $43 million. And a Leonardo da Vinci Codex sold for $31 million back in 1994. Didn't Bill Gates buy that? Right? Wasn't that Bill Gates? I can't remember. Earlier today, the Supreme Court, this is today, right before showtime. Earlier today, the Supreme Court ruled that the late Andy Warhol infringed on a photographer's copyright when he created a series of silkscreens based on a photograph of the late singer Prince. The Andy Warhol Foundation said it disagreed with the court's decision, but that it welcomed the majority's clarification that its decision is limited to that single licensing and does not question the legality of Andy Warhol's creation of the Prince series. All of that done in 1984. Andy Warhol, of course, died in 1987. All right. Archaeologists, this is incredible right here. This is incredible breaking news. Archaeologists working in Saudi Arabia and Jordan have discovered the oldest known blueprints. That's right. The extremely precise depictions, I'm putting that in quotes, engraved on stone slabs detail huge structures to funnel wild animals such as gazelles into enclosures where whole herds could be slaughtered. And according to a new study that was published yesterday in the scientific journal PLOS One, the accurate drawings of the massive kites, that's what these enclosures are called, suggested that the people who built and used the traps had advanced and sophisticated knowledge of perceived space and were able to process complex spatial information. The Stone Age hunting traps date back about 9,000 years and are known as kites because of the shape that they form. The ancient traps were first discovered in deserts of the Middle East in the 1920s by aircraft and pilots who spotted the shapes below in the landscapes. Absolutely incredible. All right. I'm going to leave you with this. A 76-year-old man has been charged with the 2005 theft of an iconic pair of ruby slippers. That's right. Stolen from the Judy Garland Museum in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The ones the actress actually wore in The Wizard of Oz, and that remained missing until they recovered 13 years later. Terry J. Martin, who lives about 12 miles south of the museum, named for the hometown hero, was indicted by a federal grand jury in Minnesota on a charge of theft of major artwork in connection with breaking in overnight, smashing plexiglass cases, and taking the size 5.5 slippers that were then on loan to the museum from a Hollywood collector. Now, the one-page indictment offered no other clues about how the theft was carried out, where the shoes had been for the years before their recovery, or how the FBI determined that Martin was the thief. There you go. Here's all the Fade to Black breaking news that you need for this Thursday, May 18th, 2023. Fade to Black breaking news is produced by Renee Newman. I'm Jimmy Church. Go back, Lay Tappy.